Hey everyone, this is George Moore, owner of Moore's Sewing Center in Southern California. And our next episode of Sewing Tech Talk with Cathy. Cathy features the new Babylock Applaud creative cover stitch machine. And now it's been made available that I can ship this nationwide. So stay tuned for after this episode to see a very special offer that I have for you on the Babylock Applaud.
The Babylock Applaud is a creative cover stitch machine. What does that mean? Well, it does a chain stitch, a cover stitch. I came up with a project I thought you might enjoy. It kind of does the features of this machine, which are kind of unique. Not a serger, not a sewing machine, kind of both, but not really. You want to find out more? I'm Cathy. This is Sewing Tech Talk. Let's talk about the Applaud Creative Cover Stitch Machine because it does some pretty fancy stuff. So I come up with this reversible placemat project. I think you might enjoy it. You could actually do this on a sewing machine, but let's do some fun stuff on the Applaud. What I want to tell you about is basically what it isn't and what it is. So sewing machine, you probably know sewing machine. Sewing machine does that stitch with the bobbin and the upper and lower thread, does all kinds of decorative stitches. We use it for piecing and quilting and garments and all that kind of stuff. A good sewing machine is your basis when you first start to sew. I've done a lot of videos also on a serger and even Babylock combination sergers. Now a serger does what's called an overlock stitch, and that's a stitch where it dances on the edge. And so you're doing just the seaming, you're doing rolled hems, you're doing a flat lock, you're doing all kinds of things where you're sewing on the edge. And it has a cutter to trim as you do that overlock stitch. Now the Babylock machines that I've been using are combination machines. They use that, of course they do that overlock. They also have the function where they do the cover and the chain stitch too. The Applaud is a cover stitch and chain stitch machine. It doesn't do that overlock function. It does the chain stitch and the cover stitch. And it has a fancy foot for doing a very special creative top cover stitch where you can add extra threads on that. And it's really very exciting. Now, who might be interested in this machine? Well, it's a cover stitch machine. So if you have a 4-thread serger that doesn't do a cover stitch, well, this might be a great addition for you. Babylock also has a cover and chain stitch machine that doesn't do that creative top cover. So if you're interested in doing that chain stitch or your height challenge and you need to hem stuff and have that hem look professional, well, a cover stitch machine is absolutely rocking for that. But I have this project. I want to showcase a couple of things that this machine does that you might not have thought about. Like I said, it's a chain stitch and a cover stitch. Now that chain stitch is basically really similar to the straight stitch that your sewing machine does. And that means you can use it to sew. It's not a sewing machine. It doesn't use a bobbin. It ain't never going to make a buttonhole. And it doesn't do those fancy stitches that look like penguins or duckies. But it does do a chain stitch. And you can use that for piecing. You can use that for garment sewing. In some of the very first machines that came out that people sewed with, well, they were a chain stitch machine. You can still get those antique machines. So we can use this machine to do that chain stitch. So when I made this placemat, and the instructions are in your handout, there's a handout for this in all of my videos. If you go to moresew.com/shop, go to the very bottom to Sewing Tech Talk with Cathy, click on that and all my handouts are there. So this is flip and sew. This is a flip and sew technique for piecing, and I made it reversible. And the instructions are in your handout. The instructions are for 4 of them. You can make just one. This would make you could even make a table runner with this. You can do all kinds of different adjustments to create this. But we're going to use the chain stitch to piece it. Now, like I said, this is a creative cover stitch machine. And if you notice the quilting utilizes the chain stitch, the chain stitch, and I'm going to do that top decorative cover stitch on the top. They look different on both sides. So here's the placemat I have in progress, and here's that fancy foot. But I hope you can see this stitch right here is that top, the top of the stitch, and it's that creative cover stitch where threads are kind of weaving back and forth through the whole thing. This is the bottom, or the bottom of the chain stitch. Now, we've been using Babylock sergers a long time to do quilting because it gives you that really cool kind of a quilting stitch when you use the chain stitch. It gives you that great little dimple, and it looks different than a regular sewing machine. But now we can add that special touch to the top and the bottom at the same time. That's why they're reversible placemats. So we're going to do that after we piece our placemat together. It's pretty simple. What I do is I take these threads over to the side. What I do is I'm going to do a stitch and flip technique, which is pretty common in a lot of, you can make that, you can make blocks out of that traditionally for quilting. What I did for mine was I had all these different scraps, and they were all different sizes. So what I did is I sewed some pieces together, and I put smaller pieces on the edge of longer ones. Like I said, they were all different sizes, and I'm putting them together in rows. Each side of the placemat takes 4 of each, right? And I alternated them. Now, you don't even have to do that. You can just do solid strips. You could get a strip set. You could just cut fabric and make it just get quilted at the same time. So it's a great technique. Now, what I do is I stitched it on a base fabric, and the base fabric I'm using is Insulbright, which is like a batting that has like this mylar layer in the middle. They use it for insulation on windows. They use it for like hot pads. Don't ever put it in the microwave because it has that don't put it in a microwave, it's not good. But I cut a piece. Like I said, the sizes are in your they're in your handout. Now, here's the applaud, and it is set up for just the chain stitch right now. If I wanted to make it a cover stitch, I would put any one of 3 different needles here. And this is the foot that comes with it. It comes with a foot and an ankle for doing this. Now, it's in the Babylock line of sergers. So if I have a foot that I can use on like my Triumph or my Ovation or any of the other 8-thread sergers, then that foot will fit, but I don't need to use the overlock feed, right? I don't need to use any of those because it's not an overlock machine. But where it does shine is for all the attachments that you can use on that machine. So for example, this is the really nice seam guide. We have belt loop makers. We have downturn fellers. There's all kinds of attachments that attach in the front, and this machine rocks and rolls with all of those different attachments. Now, I wanted to keep this simple, so I don't use any of those in this project, but I do use something that I think is pretty neat. What happens is Moores has what's called the Ultra T serger foot, and it's a composite material that's slicker. Now, when I put these together, when I put these different layers together, what happens is I'm making it reversible. So I have 2 pieces on the top, I have my base fabric, and 2 layers on the bottom. And that is a lot of fabric to go through, my friends. And it's on that kind of a batting kind of a surface. Remember, you don't have to put it on that. You could get a piece of stabilizer. You don't have to have anything fluffy. But I am using something fluffy. So what I need is I need to have all those layers flow through beautifully. And I found when I use the Ultra T foot, it does that. So I'm going to switch the foot out. And we're going to serge with this foot. Now, when we switch over to the decorative chain stitch, we'll be using that special foot. So, basically, a chain stitch, you can use it to sew stuff together. I use it to piece all the time. Why? Well, what happens is a serger, and this is a serger cousin, even though it's a cover stitch machine. Do you see the length of that foot? It's really, really long, and it has 2 sets of feed dogs down here. So what it does is it controls the fabric really, really well. So when I'm doing my piecing and putting stuff together, I don't have any kind of slippage with those different strips that I'm putting together. And especially with this Ultra T-foot, everything kind of holds together. So let's just do a basic seam. Now I can set this up for a 1/4 inch. On this project it really doesn't matter that much. So let's just sew these together with that chain stitch. Now I can control the length down here. The large lower knob does the length, just like it does on the other Babylock sergers. And I have my lovely little seam. Now, another reason I use this to do a lot of strip piecing is I never run out of bobbin, because there is no bobbin. The thread comes off the cone here for what's called the cover stitch looper, and I have a continuous thread coming down here. Now, I can piece quickly, I can piece efficiently, I can piece at speed when I set everything up for my 1/4 inch. So I like it for quilt piecing when I'm doing something like that. Am I going to do super intricate piecing with it? No, I'm probably going to go back to my sewing machine for that. But if I want to do something quick, fast, and easy, this is my go-to. Now, let's do that seam on my placemat. I have instructions in the handout, like I said. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to sew the seam and then flip it out. What you have to do is make sure that everything's lined up so that you're not, well, you can't see the bottom, you're still giving it a stitch. And I've made the seam allowances really generous on this one. So if it's a little bit off, that's okay. Remember, this is a beginner project. So let's stitch on this. I do have the pins holding it together. I normally don't do that when I'm stitching with like a serger, or I don't stitch over it with my sewing machine either. But basically, I can't hold this together with clips. Now, I can come on this side, but I'm more comfortable coming on this side. And I want you to notice the large area here. That means when I'm doing a larger project, I have as much space as I have on most sewing machines. And I have a visitor to help me. Careful, I'll sew your tail. So when I'm going to do this, I'm going to do about a 3/8 inch seam. Thanks for the help. Can you see it all? Out of the way. Move. Here's your magic carpet to take you away. So basically this project is so easy, even a cat can do it. Even a cat bugging you can do it. So there's the front and the back. And like I said, this project is very forgiving when it comes to your seam allowance. After I do that, I'm going to go to the iron, and I want to make sure that you know it's really important to press in between. So I'm going to push it out like that, press it down, and add the next strip. Since I'm going to be sewing and some pressing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete this all, and when I come back, we're going to thread up the applaud to do some decorative chain stitches. I think they're really cool, and you're really going to want to see them. And we're going to put a fancy thread in the chain cover looper too. So I'm doing 2-sided decorative quilting. Not even my sewing machine can do that. So let me get to piecing, and I'll be right back. So I pieced my top. The pattern that I have in the handout calls for 4 of each. And like I said, it could be anything. You could even put them in diagonally. Just let your creativity be your guide. But now, let's go ahead and quilt it. Now, this really doesn't need quilting because the piecing of it through the batting or the base layer quilts it. So basically I could trim it and bind it and I would be good to go. And like I said, you could also do this project on your sewing machine. The reason I'm doing it on this cover stitch machine is it kind of, well, it's an easy project, but it really helps to maintain the control with all the fluffy layers, and this foot really helps. Now the Ultra T foot, it's available for any of your Babylock 8-thread sergers, fits them all, and it's an optional accessory. Now what I need to do to switch over is I need to take off the standard ankle and put on this fancy foot that does the creative chain or cover stitch. It looks pretty aggressive, but it's pretty easy to put on. Now with Babylock sergers, we really haven't had an opportunity to change our ankle before. There's been basically no reason because the feet just snap on and off. But in this particular case, I'm going to need to take out the screw and put on the new fancy foot. Now what it does is it fits in and it goes in sideways, and you need to kind of figure out where you're going. So once you find your sweet spot, you're right there, and you're going to put the screw back on in. Now simply by putting the foot on is the only real conversion I need to do to change it over to this creative cover or chain stitch. Of course I need to put my threads in. Now I've decided to go ahead and put some fancy thread in the cover or chain stitch looper, and that looks like this. It has that kind of looped look on the back, and I'm going to put some fun threads in the top as well. And I'm going to switch my placemat halfway over in my quilting to get two different looks with the quilting. So let's change that cover stitch looper and thread it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it out. Remove my thread. And I'm going to use a 12 weight thread for this, and I've decided on that color right there. I think it'll look good on both sides. Now one trick I like to do, the machine comes with all kinds of like thread, things to hold your thread on and nets and all that kind of fun stuff. But I basically, a lot of times I'll just put my thread in a fancy jar I keep by the machine, and it works great. Now we get the need to use our air threader, which is awesome for a cover or chain stitch looper because it goes in an elliptical path. It's traditionally a little bit more challenging to thread if you're having to use the tweezers in the eye and squint a certain way. All I do is put the machine in threading, turn the flywheel on the side, boom, take my thread, insert it in the threading port, which is right here. Oops, there we go. And sometimes I give it a little extra because there's a long distance that it has to go. Now I'm going to leave my needle thread in. If I wanted to change it, I actually have a threader for that, for the needle as well. And I could change this to a cover stitch if I wanted to do a bigger, wider, fancier stitch. But I really do like this chain stitch with the threads woven through. Let's put those both threads in. They go down this path right here in the front, and I found, well, I can use basically anything. And in fact, I'm quilting this one a little bit different than the identical one to give you an idea how it looks when you add this fancy quilting. It can really change the look of a quilt. The only thread that I found that I don't like to use on the top is there a thread with multiple like layers that are not twisted together. They're just kind of laying next to each other. And I find I have to go pretty slow with that one, so I've kind of been avoiding that one. But all the other decorative threads and just regular thread as well works great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the thread through the front and then through one of these little like ears on the side. And I'm going to do 2 threads. I couldn't decide whether I wanted the metallic or just another 12 weight. I think I'm going to go with the 12 weight because it's a little bit thicker. I don't want you to really see it. It goes through the same hole at the toe of the foot, but it goes through the other ear on the right-hand side. They call them wipers. I call them ears. It doesn't really matter which side you put the thread on because they're going to switch with every stitch. So now I'm pretty much ready to go. I am going to change my stitch length a little bit longer because I have that thicker thread in there. And this little lever in the back tells the machine whether I want the wipers to go and do the crisscross threads on the top. That stops the function, and when I lift it up it makes them go back and forth. Usually I start a couple stitches and then I engage that. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to start on the side, lower my presser foot. Now, one thing I really like about this machine that I don't have on my Babylock 8-thread serger, it's on my wish list, is I have a needle up and needle down function. I've wanted that forever. I do have a top speed control. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because I'm going to try to hit the mark when I do my quilting, and I have thicker threads, so I'm going to go a little bit slower. So now let's take a couple stitches just to get it started. I'm going to go needle down, and now I'm going to engage those wipers. Now after I take a couple stitches, I know that those top threads have been secured. They're kind of in the way though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the presser foot and pull them to the back and get them kind of out of the way. Because of that needle down, I can really stop and pivot. Oops, I missed one. Now I'm basically just quilting. The top has the fun threads on the top, and the back, well, the back has that chain stitch with that pretty 12-way thread. Let me stitch a little bit and I'll show you. Now I've got some of my quilting done, and there's the front, and then there's the back. So there's the top part. Those two threads are twining back and forth between that needle thread. Here's what the back looks like. Look how fun that is. That variegated thread gives me a really neat effect. Now, I'm just going to switch and quilt from this side. I'm not going to change my threads. I totally could, but it's going to add some fun interest with that purple on this side and this variegated thread on the other side. Remember, it's super easy to change your threads at any time, but let's just see what this looks like. Now I'm going to switch and I'm going to quilt not between the layers, between the strips, but in that little ditch area. That needle down feature really helps me hit that and stop exactly where I want to go. And like I said, I've slowed it down so I can go pretty precisely. My quilting, but I'm letting the machine go because I want to show you something that's kind of fun. This machine, when I'm using the chain stitch, stitches a really fun cord. In fact, I used up some spools of thread and I made quite a bit of my fancy cord. I think I might be able to knit or crochet with this, or at least use it to stitch it down or make a tassel. A lot of creative options. Now let's see what it looks like. There's my fun cord. Here's this side. I kind of got out of the ditch a little bit. That's okay. And look how fun it is on that side. The creativity options, well, as you can see, it really changes the look when you do your piecing. Now remember, I could do this, I could make this in a bigger quilt. I could do it diagonal, I can do a table runner. I could make fabric and it's reversible. What I want to do with it, I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff. So I think the Babylock Applaud, well, it's a great cover stitch, chain stitch machine. It also has that creative top stitch. Now, if you have a Babylock 4-thread serger that doesn't do the cover stitch or the chain stitch, you could always add the basic Babylock cover chain stitch machine. Or you could get a little bit more creative. I'm Cathy and this is Sewing Tech Talk. I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for giving me your time and sticking with me. I'm going to shoot it off to George. He's going to tell you a little bit more about the Applaud, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Cathy. That was incredible. And you too can have the Babylock Applaud. for yourself at home. And we have a very special offer. The manufacturer suggested retail price on the Babylock Applaud is $44.99. And we have it on sale for $34.99. We have interest-free payments and free shipping across the country. But wait, we have a bonus. This special bonus includes 10 of the most popular feet that work with the Babylock Applaud. And there's so many wonderful things that you can do with the different stitch aspects using these feet. I love the double fold bias binder. We have both 10 millimeter and 15 millimeter. And truly, you can add that extra finish right on even a quilt edge. It's so incredible. You also have the large 36 millimeter double fold bias binder. And again, so many cool things you can do with this here. You have a belt loop binder, and the belt loop binder, it folds a belt loop so that you can make straps, and adding that different texture. Oh my goodness, it's so amazing. It has a fabric guide, a hemmer guide that's so simple just to fold a hem. It's a beautiful stitch quality on whatever fabric you want to. It also has a single downturn feller and a single fold bias binder. The single fold bias binder, I love this because it gives us a much smaller edge, and so it just gives that extra little bit of texture or color for the project that you love. It also comes with a Teflon foot and a clear foot. But also we have this bag that comes with it, so everything is organized in this wonderful bag, as well as this full color description of every single foot that I just talked about. So all that's included. That has a value of $349, and it's included free for a limited time with the Applaud purchase. So you don't want to wait. This is limited to stock on hand. Again, you get this bonus that's valued at $349 free with the Applaud purchase. So if you have any questions, you can click on the link to find out more information and purchase this Applaud, or email us at customerservice@moores-sew.com, or call us at 1-800-865-9664.